And now we get to hear the fascinating tale of LAURIE GOLUB's life and career. She's currently the COO of Square Mile Capital, and she's built her career quite fluidly, moving from law to institutional development, then to international player, and then to the Wild West of development, and now to an SEC-regulated firm. Clearly, LAURIE is always seeking, or is up for, and qualified to tackle any challenge. So I'd like her to begin by talking to us all about your family life and growing up and what your parents might have projected for you as an adult.
Sure. So thank you for that, and thank you all for being here today. This is just an amazing day, and I'm so proud of the women who are here today and inspired by all of these panels. Just awesome. I grew up, I'm originally from Brooklyn. I grew up in Chappaqua. My father grew up very poor. He was self-made as an accountant. My mother was middle class, daughter of a dentist and a school teacher. We grew up, my family, with really traditional values. We were all about family. We were all about hard work. We were all about ethics. And we were about doing the right thing in the golden rule. So I grew up with parents who instilled that golden rule in me. Reputations are built over a lifetime, destroyed in a minute. Answering people's phone calls, returning their calls. If you give your word is golden. And work. I started working when I was 11 years old. The expectation was that I would always work. I was a babysitter, and then I had a babysitting racket where I had 5 girls in the neighborhood working for me. I got $5 an hour then, and I'd take $1 cut from everyone. I went on to be a waitress. I sold shoes in a shoe store. I bartended. I always worked. I was told that that was the expectation, and I would say, wow, I really want that pair of fry boots. They're awesome. And my dad would say, I'll go half with you. And so I had to come up with the other half. And I remember the first pair I bought were $75, $37.50 back when you're a kid. It's a lot of money to come up with. And so my whole life I worked. I think in terms of their expectations, my father was my biggest champion and cheerleader. He mentored me throughout my career. He raised me, what's the right word? Gender agnostic. I was neither his daughter nor his son. I was the best. I was smart. I was focused. I was hardworking. I was strategic. And I could do whatever I wanted to do. I could be the president if I wanted. And both he and my mother were huge champions and mentors. She was in real estate since the time I was a little girl. She was a realtor, and I used to walk property with her as a little girl. And we would walk land, we would walk homes. She would talk to me about different layouts and how things were built. And I was always fascinated and loved property. That's how I got into real estate, really.
Got it. Well, it's funny, as I said with LAURIE earlier, or Joanne earlier, we both grew up Catholic and our moms were like hard driving. In this case, my father was a complete male chauvinist, so no similarity here whatsoever. So where'd you choose college? Did you have a particular major you focused on?
Sure. So I had such an interesting college experience. I always tell people, both from my career and my college, don't try this at home. I started at SUNY Albany because my brother went there, and I was a communications major. After the first year, they killed off the program. So I transferred to Boston University, where I was a communications major and finance minor. I wanted to go into investment banking, and they wouldn't let me interview on campus because I wasn't technically part of the School of Management. So I got a job at Kidder Peabody, which was an investment bank back in the 80s when I graduated school. I was an investment banker for a year. It was horrendous. I worked around the clock, 24/7. I remember after 4.5 months, I took off a Sunday, and my boss said to me, "Oh, was it a holiday yesterday?" And I laughed, said, "Even God took a day off." And his answer was, "You're not God, get back to work." And I decided this was definitely not what I was suited for. I'm a people person. I've always loved being around people. And I worked with a lot of lawyers who seemed to have a much more interesting job than I did, so I went back to law school. I applied then to NYU and Columbia, and they both said it's too late to apply. We have rolling admissions. So I was offered a seat at Cardozo, and I asked NYU and Columbia, well, could I transfer if I went there? And they said, you would really have to be top of your class to do that. So I was top of my class and worked my way into a seat at NYU. And that's been a theme in my career, has always been about work ethic and being the best that you can be at whatever you're doing. You may not love it, but I always believed that hard work and tenacity and just not taking no would get me to where I wanted to be. And so I came out of law school. I worked at some phenomenal law firms, all of which I hated every single day that I was there. About 14 years into it, I was able to switch to the business side to Varsity.
Oh, it's funny because she talks about 24/7 on Wall Street. Instead, she switched to law where they bill in 6.5-minute increments. Makes sense, you know. So you moved to Forest City Ratner. I'm really serious. We've got to get Bruce Ratner up here one of these days. But were you out looking for Forest City, or how did that happen?
So I had, through a mentor of mine, I had said, this is not what I was intended to be. I was very good technically at being a lawyer, but did not like the business of law. I didn't like that you were rewarded for the amount of time you spent instead of how well you did something or how smart you were. And it also felt like quite a treadmill. I'd finish a mortgage, great, here's a contract. I'd finish a contract, great, here's a lease. Here's a JV. There was never a bigger purpose other than billing more hours. And so I set out to figure out what I wanted to do. So one of my mentors, Bill Adamski, who was at Credit Suisse at the time, gave me a list of 50 people and said, you're gonna reach out to 50 people, and they all do different things within the industry, and they were all senior leaders in the industry, and we'll talk in 30 days, and we'll see who you've met with and what you thought. And within 30 days, I'd reached out and connected to almost all of them. Some amazing people who are still a part of my network today. And I planted lots of seeds with people, and I decided I loved that I had had such a kind of generalist career in law, and I wanted to be a developer because I wanted to continue to be a generalist but be closer to the property. And a friend of mine told me, Michael Goldban, who was at Forest City at the time, told my best friend they were looking, and she wasn't interested but knew I was. And so it was really through relationships and networking that I found the opportunity there.
And what was your focus, and what did you?
Oh boy,
where did it take you?
It was just an extraordinary time in my career. First of all, we had the most unbelievable team of both professionals, many of whom have gone on to other shops to hold leadership positions. My leadership team, Joanne was my president, will always be my president. I had amazing men and women that I worked with there. But for me, the best part was just finding my stride and my passion professionally. When I met Bruce, during the interview process, he told me he was trying to buy the Nets. So I explained to him that I was a Nets fan and actually a season ticket holder. And he said, you're a season ticket holder. Nobody is a season ticket holder of the Nets. There were like 5,000 season ticket holders. So I said, well, then why would you buy the team? And he said, this team is the key to the Atlantic Yards, this huge, mixed-use public-private development that we have envisioned, and we're going to buy the team and move them to Brooklyn. So I told him, well, then you definitely need me because you don't know anything about basketball, and I'm a huge fan. And I talked myself into basically being their general counsel and having the opportunity to work on the mixed-use development, and along with many other developments while I was there. But when I first got there, and we bought the team 2 weeks after I started, Joanne was in, I will never forget this day, David Berliner, our general counsel's office, and Joanne and I were in there, and she said, okay, so we're going out, what are we gonna do now? We bought the team. Who do we know there? I said, actually, I have a friend there. He runs marketing and sales. And she said, what do you mean you have a friend there? I said, my friend Leo. I go out to the games, I meet people. I met Leo. She said, reach out to him. Tell him we're good people. Tell him we're coming. And literally, that's what I did. But because of that phone call, I was invited to go out with the senior leadership team. Here I was, a mid-level manager, and because of my relationship, I was invited to have a seat at the table. And for me, it was a dream job. We toured their locker room. I was picking up Jason Kidd's sneakers, marveling, like, I'm getting paid for this. This is awesome. And then I got to work on grand scale developments. I worked on the Atlantic Yards, a labor of love. The Barclays Center naming rights deal was probably the most exciting trophy deal I've done in my entire career. I got to work on Ridge Hill Village, a mixed use project. I got to work on H. Spruce Street, Frank Gehry designed Renzo Piani's new New York Times building. Just amazing projects with amazing people. And I remember our days would start at 6:30 in the morning because that's when we could meet. And it never, ever felt like work to me. And that's something I would pass on to all of you. Find your passion. Because when you're doing something that you love, that you're excited about, it doesn't really feel like work. I got to go in and meet with, who are we meeting with today? What are we doing? What are we going to conquer? And development was so exciting and challenging. And there were so many different facets to it. And every day was an enormous learning experience for me. And I think you can hear my excitement when I speak about it, just to create skyline. I remember Bruce Ratner said to me, you get to a point in your career and it's not about making money, it's about making impact. How do you affect the places that you work in? And so that was a huge inspiration for me about what we were doing and how we really took this dilapidated, underutilized, blighted area of Brooklyn that had, Atlantic's terminal where there were 10 subway lines and Long Island Railroad, and envisioned this whole new area, and to revitalize downtown Brooklyn and make that impact was just hugely inspiring every day, along with the people that I got to work with and how brilliant they were and how motivated they were, and the opportunity to work as a team. Everything we did there was a team. One of the truly unique things about Forest City was we walked in and I was, associate general counsel, but when they asked for people's opinions in the room, they would go around the room and ask each person, LG, what do you think? And I would laugh because I would say, it's not really a legal question. Doesn't matter, you sat here, what do you think? So my first week, they were talking about buying out people in the arena site, and I remember there was a building of new condos, and Jim Stuckey, who ran development for us, said, we're thinking we'll probably have to offer them each 120% of what they paid a year ago for their condos. What do you think? And I said, I think you're wrong. I just went through this with my next door neighbor. He bought me out, and I wasn't thinking about a return on investment. I was thinking about where was I going to move that was bigger and nicer and more special than where I lived. So I think we're going to have to find these people really nice new homes that they'll be excited to move to. They're not going to care about the dollars. And yet he loved that, and he embraced that in me, and he embraced in everyone and empowered everyone to be the best and contribute whatever they could contribute, whether it was their specified discipline or not. Bruce, Joanne, Jim, David, Debbie, everyone I worked with really empowered each person there to bring whatever they had that was special, that was smart, that was thoughtful. And even then, as I said, as mid-level management, I had a voice at the table and an important role. And so it was really special, a unique place to be.
Well, so we've now commented on the legendary Bill Adamski, who I remember quite well, Bruce Ratner, Joanne. But your next move was to Africa, Israel. And I actually remember that I sold Africa, Israel, 2 different pieces of real estate over a 2-week period. One was for $500 million, one was for $300 million. And they never went inside either one. And we signed up these contracts and got these deals closed like 3 weeks later. So I was watching Africa, Israel going, whoa, it's interesting. I was representing the seller. But so you arrived there to really begin a workout journey, right?
Yeah, so interesting. It was they were probably the poster child for the GFC. As DARCY said, they bought a ton of things, mad buying spree without any kind of risk management. When I got to Africa, Israel, the day I got there, Cushman & Wakefield had appraised the old New York Times building for $200 million. There was $800 million worth of debt on it. I think DARCY had sold it to them for 5 and change or 6 and change. And it just became a journey of workouts. You know, really a couple of interesting stories about that. First of all, you should know the way that I landed there was, it was the GFC, there were no jobs. And I was just networking. And I heard that Africa Israel was trying to hire a general counsel. I had never heard of them before. So I reached out to 10 people who did business with the Israelis, and 2 people said, oh yeah, I know those guys, I'm working on a deal with them. And through them, I got connected to the CEO, who met me that day and said I was about to offer someone else the job. If you can accept by tomorrow, it's yours. And literally, that's how I entered there. Amazing time. He said, this is the Titanic, it's sinking. And if we can clean it up, we're heroes. And if it sinks, it was someone else's mistake, so it doesn't really matter. And so we began restructuring what was the debt, billions and billions of dollars, almost $4 billion worth of debt on a number of, you know, huge trophy properties in New York, Clock Tower, the Times Square building, 88 Leonard, and then a host of properties down in Miami. And we kept having this vision that we would restructure all the debt, and they would let us, with our business plan, go forward and start developing again. And after 2 years, they said, thank you very much, send all the money back to Israel, and Rich, you're fired, and LG, please sell everything at the company. And so it was sad, because we had a great team, and we had worked so hard to get back as much as we could and return value to the shareholders and bondholders. So I did that for about another year, and then I missed development. So really interesting experience when I was there, because when I was there, we were in a meeting. Rich had a background in asset management at Bear Stearns. He hired me for my real estate background and legal background in structuring complicated deals. We were in a meeting restructuring the debt on the Apthorpe, which was another Africa-Israel disaster. And they said, okay, this is great. All the lawyers leave the room, and the business people are going to stay here and hash out the deal. And he said, that's fine, but she stays. And they said, no way, she's your lawyer, she leaves. And he said, she's not just my lawyer, she's my managing director of business affairs or COO, whatever you want to be called. She's now the head of business at Africa Israel. And I laughed. That was literally how I got my first promotion onto the business side and entered the C-suite quite gracefully. And from then on, I just felt like I had made it to the C-suite, and I was going to hang on to that title come hell or high water. So when I ultimately then returned to development, ironically, I joined HFZ in 2012. I had been speaking to Zeal for about 9 months. We had met 20 years earlier when I was a young attorney at Robinson Silverman. I worked with him on the acquisition of the Belnord. He was partners then with Gary Barnett and Kevin Maloney. All 3 of them split and went on to run their own very successful development jobs. And we bought the building at the time for $15 million, 1.5. And everyone thought he was crazy at the time, because the building was laden with litigation and was really a mess. And he said, do you think I'm crazy?
It's like a beyond spectacular piece of real estate.
Right?
Yeah.
And he said to me, do you think I'm crazy? I remember the closing. The closing went 3 days in a row at Proskauer, Halloween of I don't even remember what year it was. And I said, no, I think you're the only one who got sleep last night, so I think you're probably the smartest guy in the room. So we had always kind of stayed in touch, and he told me he was starting over and he was building a new business, and he wanted to build a vertically integrated real estate development firm, and he wanted me to join him to do that. So I had a 5-year run there. I joined him in 2012.
And this was when the condo market was just white hot. I mean, everybody had to build as fast as they can because the condos were selling as fast as they can. So at the time, Gary had his whole thing cranking, and HFZ had theirs cranking. Maloney had his cranking. I mean, it was just a crazy time.
Unbelievable. And we were buying at land bases that were like $400 or $500 a foot, if you could imagine, and selling into a trend where we started selling condos at $1,100 a foot up to $2,200, $2,500, $3,000, $3,500, $4,000 a foot. I mean, literally, you could not have made a mistake then, which is both the blessing and the negative of condos, right? You're so market dependent. It so depends on how you buy things and what trend you sell into. But that was an amazing time. We bought 17 projects. We had over $10 billion of projects under development. I joined them. I think there were 17 of us. I hired 135 people. We acquired some unbelievable projects here in New York, substantially doing luxury condo conversion, but also hotels, and in Miami as well. And just started a construction management division, started a brokerage division. I mean, it was as simple as sitting around saying, okay, where are there streams of revenue here that we're missing out on? We're paying so much in brokers, and why don't we have a brokerage division? We're paying so much in property management, and every time I'd sit with property managers, they would tell me, we have 600 buildings. These are the financials we deliver to everyone. We cannot make changes. And I finally said, why can't they make changes? And if they can't do it, we're going to build a better mousetrap. So we built a property management division. And I built out an amazing team. And I left in 2017, July 9th, I remember the day. They were so overlevered. We had, DARCY had sold to us 76 11th, which was the most expensive. You love how DARCY's woven into the fabric of every deal that gets done in the city because she's a rock star. DARCY had sold to us 76 11th, the full city block, 17th to 18th, 11 to 12th. It was done for well over $800 million. We had
over 900.
We had closed on the construction financing, and I just thought the company had gone too far, too long, too overlevered. And at the peak, we were still buying very expensive properties, and I just didn't see how deals could get done at $4,000 a foot, maybe for penthouses, but I just didn't see it anymore. Really interesting story about that deal. At the beginning of the deal, when we were pitching, and in the second round when we pitched, DARCY actually picked up the phone and called me and said, are these guys real? Do they have their money?
Because, by the way, they were outbidding Google for the site.
And other big development shops. And, the power of relationships, right? Again, it's a theme that comes up all the time. And I think DARCY's call to me gave her the confidence that they could, in fact, close. And then at just about a year earlier, the same building that Zila and I had bought 20 years prior for $15 million, he then bought just the residential portion of the Belle Nord for about $600 million. And you could see, it was like Scarface, right? Getting high on your own stuff. You could see the company was just doing these exponentially bigger deals, overpaying for deals just because there was such a frenzy of people trying to get into the condo space. And you almost could time the market when you started to see these deals happen, when they were getting so big and there was so much capital, and there were people who weren't condo players getting into the condo space because it looked like everyone was making money and it was just dripping off the trees. And so it was a fascinating time to be there, but I left in 2017 and just thought I wanted to do something else.
You're lucky you didn't move into the retail sector, because that's when that went too. So it really is a fascinating group of different people that you worked for, because you really worked for Marin under Africa Israel as opposed to Lev Levayev, right?
Right. Rich Marin was my CEO,
yeah.
So I worked for an American investment banker. Right. I didn't work for a diamond dealer in Israel. He came to New York once, and I met him during my tenure, but really I worked for Rich Marin.
Yeah, I was a little afraid when I met him.
What's that?
I was a little afraid when I met him.
the big man.
Why don't we spend a minute outside of real estate? I know that you have a special someone in your life, and I too love to brag about my daughters. And I'm often asked about work-life balance. So if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Sure. My Bashert, the very special person in my life, is an 11-year-old girl named Jada Jinx GOLUB. She was adopted at birth. I was there with her when she was born, and I cut the cord. Through having lost my fiance many years ago, and through some relationships that just didn't end in marriage, decided in my early 40s I had to have a child. And I didn't know why, but I knew that I wanted to be a mother. And so I set out on an incredible journey that changed me forever as a person. As I traveled the country, meeting with people who had fewer options than I did, had not the same kind of family support that I did, and had different choices and options that I did. And I met a family that placed their daughter with me. As I said, I was there when she was born. And it's been an incredible miracle ever since, and has changed me dramatically. When I first adopted her, I was at Africa, Israel, and I was lucky to be already in the C-suite. So I had total control of my schedule. I remember right before she was born, Rich and I were on a flight to Miami, closing a deal. I said, by the way, I should probably mention to you that I'm adopting a child, and she'll probably be here in about a month. So I might want to take some time off. So he looked at me incredulously and said, "What? You want to be a mother? I thought you just wanted to do deals." And I said, "Oh my God, you must think I'm some kind of monster." And he said, "No, you just are all about work, and all we ever talk about is deals and work." And I was so work focused. I obviously love what I do. I love everything that I've done in this industry, including what I'm doing now at Square Mile with some amazing women who are here. And I was just actually talking to Angela and Maggie, who are here today, about having a mom and working. I think, as I said, once I was already in the C-suite, the work-life balance was easier. There is no such thing as work-life balance. Whatever's screaming the loudest is what you turn your attention to. Just like juggling responsibilities at work, you need to do the things that you need to do to feel like you're being a good professional, and you need to do the things that you feel like you need to do in order to be a good mother. I was a big advocate of staffing up. I've had live-in help since my daughter was born. I had a baby nurse for the whole first year. I felt no guilt about any of that. I did not want to be a single mother. I wanted to be a happy mother. And so I felt guilty in the morning when I left my house, and I felt guilty in the evening when I left my office. And other than that, I felt happy and fulfilled doing everything that I got to do. I work for an amazing guy now, Craig Solomon.
And it's funny, if I may, Craig, during COVID, I had time, obviously, to not sell office buildings because nothing was selling. And so I picked a few people that I would, get on routine calls with and, just catch up and discuss the market with. And Craig was one of them. Actually, Owen Thomas, the head of Boston Properties, was another. I just picked a few strategic different people that I didn't really have deep relationships with, and just got on the phone. And so I would love for you to talk a little bit more about Craig and now your time at Square Mile, because it's such a different type of company, and they're everywhere.
They are. It's an amazing team. So when I left Zeal, I just wanted to go back to something more institutional, which is what I know. And I said, look, I've been a lawyer, I've been a developer. I don't know what I want to do. Maybe I'll be a lawyer, maybe I'll be a developer, maybe I'll run asset management. I just knew that I wanted to work for someone who was really smart, who I could learn something from in an institutional environment with a great team. And I wanted to make sure that we were aligned in how we wanted to run a business and run a team. And it's really interesting. The day after I left HFZ, I had lunch with Jimmy Kuhn, who is the chairman of the board of SHAC. and a huge supporter of the diversity program there. I think he funded diversity scholarships there, gave $1 million to the school in order to fund the students. But I had lunch with him and he said, so what do you want to do? I said, I want to work for a good guy. Find me a good guy. And he introduced me to Craig, and we spoke over a period of time, and we probably got together 7 or 8 times because I really wanted to feel confident that we shared a point of view and thinking about how to run a firm. And the firm is fascinating. It was built so strategically. We are totally diversified in terms of funds and product type. We, together with our partners at USAA Real Estate, like to say that we can meet a borrower or a sponsor anywhere along the risk spectrum. We have debt funds that do mezz and bridge and construction lending. We have an equity platform that's doing opportunistic equity deals, that's doing pref equity deals. We have this, we were very early movers in the media space, and so during pandemic, we bought billions of dollars of media studios with our partners at Hackman Capital out of LA. We are in industrial, we're in multifamily. We are now actively lending on life sciences. We are backed by partners at USAA who invest in all of our funds and have boots on the ground across the country. So this is very different for me because this is a national platform. So I've gotten more out of New York and out of Florida to see more markets and more of the country, but just an amazing team of people. And it's been really interesting to work in the private equity space. I think, one thing that I tell people, when you're young and you're in this business, you want to master the technical skills of your trade. So whatever you're doing, be the best at it. If you're an analyst, learn modeling, learn presentation skills. As you grow into your career, learn negotiation, learn procedure. And I think as you get more senior, your gaze turns out. And so you go from being technician to deal junkie to having more of a macro view. So you look more at economic trends. You look more at strategic growth of organizations. You look more at building things. And at legacy, it's been very important to me that while I've been at Square Mile to be focused on diversity issues, hiring people of color, hiring more women, and then mentoring and promoting and sponsoring women within our team to make sure that they're successful. And I think it's not just me, it's Craig, it's the other men on our team who all believe in it as well. I just feel a personal responsibility to do that because there have been so many people like Joanne and like other women who really mentored me and rabbied me throughout my career.
And when you mention USAA, for those that don't know, that is the insurance company for military personnel, right? Life insurance and everything, products. So it's kind of like what Hillary was saying, which is that endless bucket of money, right?
Right, so USAA
so
Real
you don't
Estate,
have to fund from other places.
Yes, they are the real estate subsidiary of the insurance company and have huge balance sheet and have given us huge financial strength. And it's great because every time we've had a new fund, they've been institutional capital that invests in all of our funds with us. And so they've been a great partner. They also have tremendous market insight and data for us as they're out there across the country. And so lend strength to us. They also do stuff that's totally different than what we do. They have the insurance company style lending. So the more stabilized core, stabilized asset office buildings and core equity investment, whereas the stuff we're doing is edgier, higher octane, kind of the sexier end of the business. But together, it's a really compelling story for our partners and our borrowers to be able to kind of go to one stop and have all your capital needs met there. So
yeah, it's crazy about real estate because like Michael Hackman was a CB real estate broker who did studio work in California and branched out on his own, is now one of the largest studio owners in the country, right, with you guys?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazingly, foreshadowed this whole craze in the world now about the demand for content and studios being so important.
Streaming.
And, a couple of years into it, Michael also saw that through buying into the operating company at Manhattan Beach Studios, we kind of had the secret sauce. because we are not only in the real estate now, but we're also in the operating company. And so all of the equipment that's leased to studios, the gaffs, the grips, the lights,
all that stuff.
all of the operational part, or saying, hey, you have a show and we're busy here, but we can put you in this other studio in the same town, brought tremendous foresight to this. And so we've been hugely active in the last few years. Michael is just really a visionary and forward thinker. And he and Craig have an incredible partnership, and it's really exciting to be part of the growth of this industry.
Well, we're pretty much at the end of our time, so I'm not going to be able to get to all your other passions, which are extraordinary. She's got this long list of boards and everything, but it's been fantastic to talk to you about this. And
Thank you.
Somewhere there's an award for you, but I don't know where it is, so you don't get it. No, I'm kidding. Do we have the award?
If I could just add, as I say to all young women who are starting in the industry or students, learn your skill set, know your trade, get really good at what you do, work on great deals, promote the hell out of it so that the people that you're working for know what you're doing, and then build your network. On every single deal, make a friend, take the broker to lunch, stay in contact with your borrower, whatever it is, because this is an information business, and so much of what I've done through the relationships that I've accumulated, and they're invaluable to you in this industry. Whether you're a junior person or a senior person, it's a relationship business, and so it really matters. So take the time, even when you're working so hard at the most junior levels, to network, to be at conferences like this, and to get to know people within the industry. Thank you so much.
I hope you've enjoyed our two leaders.